The battlefield at Waterloo is shrouded in thick fog, cannon fire reverberating across the muddy plains as Napoleon Bonaparte surveys the unfolding chaos from atop his white charger. The acrid stench of gunpowder hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of blood and the cries of wounded soldiers. The thunderous roar of artillery is punctuated by the clash of swords and the bark of officers shouting commands. Napoleon's piercing gaze locks onto the wavering British lines, his mind dissecting every fault in their formation with surgical precision. Unlike history's telling, his orders are swift and uncompromising, a series of calculated maneuvers that cascade through his ranks like ripples on a battlefield pond. Troops move like clockwork under his command, their discipline and precision reflecting his unparalleled leadership. Reinforcements from Grouchy's delayed forces arrive in the nick of time, their banners piercing through the mist like a vision from the heavens. The thunder of hooves and the glint of polished steel announce their arrival, igniting renewed vigor in Napoleon's forces. They sweep into position with ruthless efficiency, flanking the Allied forces and unleashing a devastating barrage of musket fire and cannonade. The British lines falter under the relentless assault, their cohesion unraveling like frayed rope. Amid the chaos, Wellington's once formidable army collapses into disorder, soldiers abandoning their posts as panic takes hold. Napoleon's tactical brilliance unfolds with devastating clarity, his formations encircling the enemy like an unyielding vice. Forced into a hasty and humiliating retreat, Wellington's shattered forces scatter into the distance, their cries of despair lost in the echoing din of French victory. Europe's history diverges sharply. Britain's crushing defeat sends shockwaves through the fragile coalition, unraveling alliances that had sought to contain Napoleon's ambitions. The Congress of Vienna, a bastion of post-war diplomacy, crumbles under the weight of this seismic shift in power. Napoleon, triumphant and reinvigorated, seizes the moment to consolidate his rule. He swiftly moves to re-establish French dominance, sending envoys to former allies and issuing proclamations to restore unity under his empire. The streets of Paris erupt in celebration as news of his victory spreads. Fireworks illuminate the night sky, and citizens pour into the boulevards, waving tricolor flags and chanting Napoleon's name. The victory sparks a renewed sense of national pride, with artists and writers immortalizing the triumph in grand works of art and literature. Markets brim with celebratory goods, and impromptu parades march through neighborhoods, showcasing the newfound energy of the people. Soldiers, returning home victorious, are greeted as heroes, their stories inspiring a generation raised on tales of Napoleon's unyielding resolve. Napoleon's empire, once teetering on the brink of collapse, now stands renewed with fervor, casting a long and imposing shadow over Europe. The Napoleonic era does not end, it surges forward with unrelenting force. French banners flutter across the continent as Napoleon solidifies his dominance, implementing sweeping reforms and fortifying his military might. Roads and infrastructure are rapidly modernized to strengthen the empire's control, while educational reforms ensure loyalty to the emperor's vision. Science and industry are propelled forward, with new inventions serving both the military and civilian realms. Factories spring up in major cities, producing advanced weaponry and innovative tools that revolutionize daily life across the empire. The course of history shifts dramatically, as nations scramble to adapt to the unrelenting reality of a world dominated by the emperor's ambitions. Diplomatic efforts falter as smaller nations struggle to maintain autonomy in the shadow of French supremacy. This victory marks not only a turning point but the dawn of a relentless chapter of domination, innovation, and conflict. The dream of an eternal empire begins to take shape, casting a vision both awe-inspiring and ominous over the future of Europe. The Eiffel Tower of a generation later will not commemorate unity but serve as a towering reminder of Napoleon's enduring legacy, an empire where progress and control walk hand in hand, forging a destiny as bright as it is precarious. With the Allies defeated, Napoleon consolidates his power, reshaping Europe under his vision. His sweeping reforms leave no corner of the continent untouched. Unified Europe, Napoleon establishes the Continental Federation, a unified European empire governed from Paris. Local monarchies are either abolished or reduced to ceremonial roles, their authority replaced by efficient bureaucracies fiercely loyal to the emperor. Provincial leaders are handpicked for their loyalty, ensuring central control while fostering the illusion of regional autonomy. These leaders enforce Napoleon's sweeping policies, from tax reforms to cultural standardization, creating a system of governance that aims for efficiency but stifles regional diversity. Schools emphasize imperial history, molding future generations to view Napoleon's rule as destiny. Propaganda reinforces this vision, with public art and literature glorifying the emperor as a savior of civilization. Special celebrations mark Napoleon's victories, embedding his image as a divine figure in the hearts of citizens. Economic revolution. The Napoleonic Code becomes the foundation of a pan-European legal system, simplifying trade and fostering economic growth. Massive investments in infrastructure, including roads, canals, and railways, connect cities and facilitate commerce. Industrial hubs spring up across the empire, pushing Europe toward an early industrial revolution. Workers flood into urban centers, with sprawling factories churning out goods that fuel economic expansion. A centralized banking system stabilizes the economy, and standardized currency bolsters Napoleon's vision of an interconnected empire. However, the rapid industrialization creates stark divisions between wealthy industrialists and struggling laborers, planting the seeds of unrest in the working class. Exploitation in factories becomes rampant, with children and women bearing the brunt of grueling conditions, sparking the first organized labor movements. These movements, although inspiring to many, are quickly and brutally suppressed by imperial forces, leaving a legacy of simmering resentment. Cultural Golden Age. Napoleon positions himself as a patron of the arts and sciences, commissioning grand projects that glorify the empire. Museums, theaters, and universities flourish under imperial funding, drawing the brightest minds from across Europe to Paris. Architects design opulent monuments and public spaces, including triumphal arches and imperial palaces, to showcase the empire's dominance. Scientists, backed by Napoleon's resources, achieve breakthroughs in engineering, medicine, and astronomy, advancing Europe's intellectual standing. Composers and playwrights are celebrated, their works glorifying Napoleon's victories and ideals, while artists immortalize his rule through masterpieces that blend propaganda with cultural pride. Grand exhibitions are held, showcasing the empire's achievements to a captivated public. The cultural renaissance is accompanied by a darker undercurrent, as dissenting voices in art and literature are censored or co-opted into the imperial vision, ensuring conformity. Yet, despite the grandeur, cracks begin to form beneath the surface. Resentment grows in the conquered territories, where unique cultural identities are eroded under the weight of French dominance. Local traditions are suppressed, with languages and customs marginalized in favor of a homogenized imperial identity. Nationalist uprisings simmer in Spain, Italy, and Germany, as regions resist the loss of autonomy and cultural heritage. Revolts periodically flare, often crushed with brutal efficiency, yet each rebellion leaves scars that weaken the empire's unity. Dissidents form underground networks, spreading anti-French sentiment and organizing acts of sabotage that disrupt key industries and infrastructure. Rural regions, particularly those far from industrial hubs, seethe with anger as taxes rise to fund urban projects, deepening the divide between the urban elite and the countryside. The British Navy, undeterred, enforces a relentless blockade that chokes maritime trade routes, straining Napoleon's economic reforms. Smuggling networks thrive, bypassing the blockade but introducing widespread corruption. Inflation and shortages of essential goods create unrest, particularly in rural areas where industrialization has yet to bring tangible benefits. In urban centers, the working class grows increasingly disillusioned as the promises of prosperity fail to materialize for many, leading to strikes and protests. Clashes between laborers and imperial enforcers become a grim hallmark of life in industrialized cities. A growing number of ex-soldiers, struggling to adapt to civilian life, join these protests, adding to the volatility. Napoleon's dream of a harmonious, unified Europe teeters under the strain of its own ambition. The centralized bureaucracy, overwhelmed by the scale of governance, struggles to maintain order across a vast and diverse empire. Whispers of rebellion grow louder in the shadow of imperial grandeur. Discontent spreads among the empire's citizens, from disenfranchised workers to disillusioned elites. The once unshakable loyalty of his generals begins to waver, with some questioning the sustainability of the emperor's relentless expansion. Cracks in the empire's foundations deepen, and alliances within the imperial court begin to fracture. The stage is set for future turmoil, as the empire's grand ambitions collide with the harsh realities of its internal dissent and external pressures, threatening to unravel Napoleon's towering legacy and forcing the world to confront the limits of power and control. Napoleon's ambitions turn outward. With Europe firmly under his control, he shifts his focus to the wider world. Colonial expansion. Napoleon seeks dominance in Africa and the Americas, clashing fiercely with British colonies and revitalizing France's overseas ambitions. In the Caribbean, France regains control of key islands, transforming them into economic hubs for sugar, coffee, and rum production. However, these gains are marred by persistent slave rebellions, forcing Napoleon to allocate additional military forces to suppress uprisings. In Africa, French forces establish fortified trading posts along the coasts and push inland to control lucrative trade routes for gold, ivory, and human labor. Campaigns in North Africa see prolonged battles as the French army entrenches itself in the region, forging uneasy alliances with local powers while facing resistance from desert tribes. Napoleon's engineers construct a series of forts and supply depots to secure these gains, but the costs in lives and resources weigh heavily on the empire. In the Americas, French fleets clash with British ships in intense naval battles, disrupting key shipping lanes and challenging British dominance in the Atlantic. French privateers capture merchant vessels, redistributing their wealth to fuel the empire's expansion. The reshaped global trade routes create economic upheaval, altering the balance of power and reshaping geopolitics in ways Napoleon could scarcely predict. French settlers establish colonies in strategic locations, attempting to build long-term footholds in territories once dominated by British influence. Internal rebellion. Within the empire, nationalist uprisings erupt across Spain, Italy, and Germany, where populations grow restless under French occupation. Guerrilla fighters stage hit-and-run attacks, ambushing imperial convoys and destroying critical supply lines. In Spain, resistance groups supported by British operatives lead coordinated assaults on French garrisons, draining resources and morale. Italy's underground networks rally disparate factions, bringing together regional leaders to ignite widespread revolts that engulf both urban centers and rural areas. In Germany, secret societies disseminate anti-French propaganda, inspiring citizens to resist occupation through strikes, sabotage, and acts of civil disobedience. These rebellions force Napoleon to stretch his forces thin, deploying reinforcements to multiple fronts, and compelling his generals to employ brutal measures to restore order. The brutality of these campaigns deepens resentment, creating martyrs who inspire future resistance movements. Despite their efforts, the uprisings weaken the empire's grip on its territories, fostering an atmosphere of instability that spreads like wildfire. In some regions, entire towns form alliances with guerrilla bands, creating autonomous zones that challenge imperial authority. As these global conflicts escalate, the emperor's health begins to falter under the immense strain of warfare and governance. Once renowned for his unwavering resolve and boundless energy, Napoleon becomes increasingly frail, his physical decline visible in his slower gait and pallid complexion. His legendary sharpness is dulled by sleepless nights and unrelenting stress. Trusted advisors notice his growing paranoia, with the emperor issuing sweeping orders to root out imagined conspiracies within his court. Political purges disrupt the inner workings of the imperial administration, silencing dissent but creating a climate of fear among his closest allies. The purges extend to military leadership, where Napoleon's mistrust forces experienced generals into early retirement or exile, leaving the empire's defenses increasingly vulnerable. This atmosphere of fear stifles innovation and decision-making, as even trusted aides hesitate to propose solutions that might be perceived as criticisms. Whispers of succession ripple through the court as Napoleon's weakening condition raises questions about the future of his empire. Factions emerge, each advocating for a different successor. Some champion Napoleon's young and inexperienced son, Napoleon II, as the rightful heir, while others quietly support seasoned generals or influential ministers to assume control. Meanwhile, fractures within the imperial court deepen. Generals, once loyal to Napoleon, begin positioning themselves for greater power, forging secret alliances and undermining each other in anticipation of a leadership vacuum. Ministers quietly cultivate their own interests, prioritizing their survival over the stability of the empire. The emperor's once tight grip on his inner circle loosens, as rivalries and betrayals turn the court into a dangerous arena of political intrigue. Even Napoleon's family members, often beneficiaries of his policies, begin maneuvering for power, adding to the fractious environment. As the once unassailable regime begins to show signs of decay, the empire's fate hangs in the balance. The combined weight of external conflicts, internal rebellions, and political infighting casts a shadow over Napoleon's vision of an eternal empire, leaving the future of his legacy in peril. Napoleon's empire, though monumental, begins to resemble a colossus with feet of clay, its immense structure vulnerable to the very forces that built it. Each victory now seems to carry the seeds of its eventual collapse, as the pressures of maintaining such an expansive domain threaten to overwhelm even the most determined leader. Napoleon's relentless ambition proves both his strength and his undoing. A coalition of suppressed nations, Germany, Spain, and Italy, rises against the empire, secretly aided by Britain and Russia. The uprisings are meticulously coordinated through clandestine networks, leveraging guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and propaganda to undermine French authority. Resistance leaders, many of whom were inspired by earlier defeats, emerge as charismatic figures rallying their people against French domination. These leaders foster a sense of unity and purpose among disparate factions, turning local grievances into a continental movement. The empire, once feared and admired, begins to fracture under the weight of sustained rebellion and external pressure. Napoleon's once loyal generals grow weary of his iron rule, increasingly questioning the feasibility of holding such a vast dominion together in the face of mounting adversity. The final campaign, despite his failing health, Napoleon takes personal command of his armies in a desperate bid to quell the uprisings. The battles are grueling and unrelenting, with engagements stretching across the Pyrenees, the Alps, and the dense forests of Germany. Napoleon's strategic brilliance shines in key moments, orchestrating daring counterattacks and inspiring his troops with impassioned speeches. His presence on the battlefield galvanizes his soldiers, many of whom remain fiercely loyal to the emperor despite their dire circumstances. However, the empire's resources are nearly depleted. Supply lines are severed by insurgents, who use the terrain to their advantage, ambushing convoys and disrupting reinforcements. Starvation and disease ravage the French ranks, and morale plummets as victories become increasingly rare. The French army, once a symbol of invincibility, is gradually worn down by attrition, desertions, and the sheer relentlessness of its enemies. Villages once loyal to the empire refuse aid, fearing retribution from the growing coalition forces. Stories of entire regiments being annihilated spread through the ranks, sowing further despair. Betrayal within. As the rebellions escalate, Napoleon's generals, long resentful of his uncompromising demands, begin to conspire against him. Secret meetings are held in fortified garrisons, where they debate their allegiance and the future of France. Prominent figures, including some of Napoleon's closest confidants, weigh the risks of betrayal against the crumbling stability of the empire. A growing faction of generals argues that the emperor's relentless pursuit of glory has doomed France to perpetual war and hardship. During the siege of Milan, a decisive act of treachery seals Napoleon's fate. Trusted officers, acting on secret agreements with coalition forces, deliberately delay reinforcements, leaving Napoleon's position vulnerable. Encircled and outnumbered, Napoleon fights with characteristic tenacity, personally leading charges and refusing to yield until the bitter end. His final stand becomes the stuff of legend, with accounts of the emperor rallying his remaining troops even as the situation grows increasingly hopeless. Realizing defeat is inevitable, the emperor surrenders, though not without a final, defiant proclamation of his vision for France. Napoleon is forced to abdicate, his second and final exile carried out with ruthless efficiency. He is transported under heavy guard to a remote island fortress, isolated from the world he once sought to dominate. This time, the Allies ensure that no escape is possible, surrounding his prison with constant surveillance and naval patrols. The former emperor, now a prisoner of his own ambition, spends his remaining days dictating memoirs and contemplating the legacy of his once mighty empire, which continues to crumble in his absence. As he watches the sunset over the endless ocean, Napoleon reflects on the triumphs and failures of his reign, aware that his name will echo through history as both a conqueror and a cautionary tale of unbridled ambition. Decades later, the world bears the enduring imprint of Napoleon's legacy. The Napoleonic Code serves as the backbone of European legal systems, its principles echoed in constitutions and judicial reforms across continents. These laws emphasize equality before the law, property rights, and secular governance, forming a blueprint for modern judicial systems far beyond Europe's borders. His industrial reforms and centralized governance become templates for the development of modern nation-states, inspiring infrastructure projects like railroads, canals, and urban planning that drive progress for generations. Educational reforms, initiated under his regime, persist in creating a literate and skilled populace, fostering innovation and economic growth. These advancements ripple across the globe, influencing the rise of powerful industrial economies and shaping the modern era. Yet, the scars of his conquests remain deeply etched into the cultural and political fabric of Europe. Entire societies were irrevocably altered, their traditions subsumed under the weight of imperial standardization. Linguistic and cultural homogenization erased local identities, fueling resentment that would later manifest as nationalist fervor. The seeds of nationalism he sought to suppress take root, flourishing into future movements that ignite both liberation and devastating conflicts, reshaping the borders of Europe time and again. In the heart of Paris, a colossal statue of Napoleon rises above the cityscape, its solemn visage gazing toward the horizon as if contemplating the future he once sought to command. Around its base, bronze plaques detail his achievements, the code, the infrastructure, the victories. Alongside these are reminders of the immense human cost, wars that ravaged continents, and lives disrupted by his relentless ambition. Crowds gather beneath the statue, some in admiration of his vision and leadership, others in quiet reflection on the turmoil of his reign. Historians hold lectures nearby, using the monument as a backdrop to discuss his complex legacy. On occasion, debates spark among onlookers, with impassioned voices weighing the merits of his reforms against the suffering they caused. The faint hum of the city serves as a backdrop, blending with the whispers of tourists and locals who pause to read the inscriptions. At night, the statue is bathed in soft illumination, casting long shadows that seem to merge with the bustling streets below, symbolizing how his legacy continues to influence the world. The statue stands as both a tribute and a caution, a towering reminder of a man whose vision reshaped the world and whose unyielding ambition ultimately consumed him. His legacy, as profound as it is complex, continues to provoke debate and reflection, symbolizing both the heights of human achievement and the perils of overreach. For some, it is a monument to greatness; for others, a warning against hubris. For all, it remains a testament to the enduring power of a single individual to alter the course of history forever.